This is Tanveer Muhammad Masood once again, and in this part of my talk, I would try and dwell on other aspects of life which are basically worth talking about. Then we can try and speak a little, wherein we can spare our thought and we can throw some light out there. So one such issue that is indeed a part and parcel of our life is laughter. Laughter and comedy goes hand in hand. Now, a good human being and in fact a healthy human being has to have a little bit of laughter in his or her life. And therefore, in order to make laughter successful, a certain amount of comedy is indeed necessary. So I thought, given the current hustle and bustle of life, if we can spare a little time for a little laughter in our life, for a little amount of comedy in our life, by being a little humorous and being showing a little sense of humor of ours, we can indeed bring a humor and laughter in our life. So laughter and comedy is, or rather are basically of different kinds, and depending on the age of person and the mindset of that person. Some sort of comedy is made for some sort of person, while other sorts of comedy is made for other kind of person. It all depends on how a person reacts to a particular sort of comedy. Comedy can be on the basis of different aspects of our lives, affecting our life. It can be in regarding to any such issue. It all depends on how the person who is making us laugh and how the person who is reacting to such a comedy is going to bring that comedy to great success. It all depends on the person and the topic on which such comedy is being made. Comedy and sense of humor goes hand in hand, as does laughter, because only a person who has a great sense of humor can bring comedy. And indeed, comedy is indeed a part and parcel of a life, indispensable, because as I said, in this life of ups and downs, we need to be a little humorous so that our frustration within us, our daily tension that brings us into a state where we almost forget to laugh or smile. This is indeed a situation wherein we can bring a little smile on our face by being a little humorous and by bringing a little bit of comedy in our life. So I thought indeed comedy is in there and should be in there in everybody's life. Well, one such comedy, and in fact it's a fictitious story, which is basically on two couples, and it goes like this. There were two people, very old people, not quite very old people, they were in the middle age, and they were basically two couples, and they were leading a very happy life, and they were in fact coming from a very well-to-do family, and they had everything in their life, and they had no one except their children. They had not a single kid with them. They were almost on the verge of their 50s and 60s, and they had no children whatsoever. And what exactly happened is that one day they were, in fact, the husband was kidnapped, and they were basically kidnapped because of the fact that the husband was a scientist, and he was basically having some sort of formula which was very, very confidential in nature, and that formula was basically intended to create some sort of ripples all over the world. It was very confidential and secret in nature, and no one ever knew as to what exactly that formula was all about. And that formula was basically in the form of a small equipment. And what exactly happened is that that equipment was basically the root of or rather the reason behind his kidnapping by some local goons or by some local scumsters, basically who are after such scientists who are basically very intellectual in nature, and this person was very intellectual in nature. He was a scientist, and he was on the verge of completing or finishing this formula. So his wife was aware of the fact that her husband was trying to make this formula, and he was almost on the verge of it, but actually the equipment was a very small equipment. It was of the size of a small box, of a ring box, for example. We have small little ring box wherein rings are kept. It was pretty much like that, and if someone tried to rub that box, that person would go on to become either very, very old or either very, very small little baby. This was the secret behind the formula, and no one ever knew as to what exactly behind this. In fact, this was the secret, and it was very confidential, and even the wife didn't knew that what exactly lied beneath. So what exactly happened is that when the husband got kidnapped, he somehow tried to free himself, and the wife somehow reached to that place wherein the husband was trying to escape, and they were actually on the same car, and all of a sudden the husband found that that equipment was lying inside the car, and he tried to, in a very price condition, and in the heat of the moment, he somehow got the touch of that box, small little box, and basically what exactly happened is that the moment he touched that box, he became a very small little baby. Now he was sitting just beside his wife, and he finds himself that he is in fact a very small little baby of say 5 months or even 1 year old little baby, a small toddler for example. So this was indeed a situation wherein his wife was taken aback. She was astounded, and she was pretty stunned to see that her wife of 50 or 60 years old is now 5 months or 1 year toddler, and she was simply taken aback by this scenario. Now, it was the most amazing part of the entire event that was taking place in their life. It was basically not an original story. It's in fact a man-made story, and it's intended to bring laughter in. Nothing as such is intended to harm anyone who are basically childless. It's basically humorous in nature, and it should not be taken very seriously. It's basically intended to bring a little amount of comedy, and it all depends as to how a person reacts to such comedies these days. So it might not be acceptable, or it might not be quite go down into the throat of some people, and they might not like such comedies, but as I said in the very beginning, that comedies are of various types, and it all depends on the person on how they accept such comedies in their life. There are some comedies which are basically not quite acceptable to few, while there are others which make us laugh like terribly. So this was it about comedy. There are certain stand-up comedians these days who try to bring cheer to our face, and thereby bringing a little humor in our life. So all in all, it all depends on how we react to comedy, and it all depends on the sort of comedy being made by the person. All in all, it all intends to bring a little humor in our life, and it should be taken in a very light and very humorous way, rather than overreacting in a very serious way or taking exception to such comedies.